Hi again, everyone. I'm Dr. Aletha Marie Harven. You can call me Dr. Harven, or you can call me by my first name, Aletha. And I want to introduce my program for those of you who are not familiar with my webinar series. So my webinar series is titled Transformative Conversations Promoting Equity and Inclusion in Education and Beyond. I am kicking off my third season of this webinar series with this three-part series that I've put together and I'm hosting. And as you know, it's titled Black and Jewish Voices, Exploring the Kanye West and Kyrie Irving Controversy. And so I just want to go over the three-part series really quickly for all of you. So I know some of you were in the virtual conversation yesterday on anti-Semitism with my guest speaker, Teresa Dranek, and I thought she did a really great job talking to us about anti-Semitism. And today we have Dr. Zack Ritter, who has been on this program before, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. And today he is going to be talking with me about Black and Jewish history, trauma, and collective liberation. And then tomorrow, Friday, at the same time, everyone, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, I am going to have a panel of Black men talking about justice and accountability in relation to Kanye and Kyrie. So that's sure to be a really great discussion. Okay, so let me get to my guest speaker who's here today. Like I said, Dr. Ritter, he was on my program 2 years ago. And I invited him to come on because he has a wealth of knowledge on Jewish history, and I wanted to talk about Black and Jewish relations, and we talked about unity and disunity and coalition building, and it was a really great conversation, and I really appreciated him coming on with another wonderful scholar as well. And so that conversation, I know some of you have watched it because the recording has been posted, and I've been seeing the numbers go up. I've been seeing people watching it. So I will be sending out the link for this recording, and the link for this recording will also have that recording in case you want to look at it. So let me go ahead and introduce you, Zack. So Zachary Ritter received his Ph.D. in higher education from the University of California, Los Angeles, so UCLA. We're both Bruins. And his work focused on Asian international students' cross-racial interactions. He is currently the Vice President of Leadership Development at the Jewish Federation. And prior to that position, he was the Associate Dean of Students at California State University, Dominguez Hills, where he helped run the Office of Community Standards, Restorative Justice Department, and basic needs and housing and food insecurity programs. He also teaches social justice history at UCLA and Cal State Dominguez Hills. He is a diversity and inclusion consultant for organic communications and SCG diversity consulting. Prior to this work, he was the interim associate dean of the Office of Institutional Diversity at Harvey Mudd College. He has co-edited a book called Whiteness, Power, and Resistance to Change in Higher Education, and has a forthcoming book called Emancipatory Change in Higher Education. Welcome, Zack.
You make me sound smarter than I am, but I appreciate that.
I think you're very smart. Okay.
We'll see.
All right, so before we move forward, I just want to quickly position myself in this conversation, and then I have a question that's going to help Zack position himself. And the reason I want to do this is because sometimes with my sessions, I like to just ask questions and listen to the speakers. And then other times I like to interject a little bit more. I'm not sure how this conversation is going to go, but I thought it would still be appropriate to discuss how I want to bring myself to this conversation. So the way that I'm approaching this conversation is from a place of being a learner and being flexible in my thinking. I feel that I'm always flexible in my thinking and always wanting to know more. So I am really excited for this conversation. And I also want to make a note that although Dr. Ritter or Zach and I will be focused on Black and Jewish communities, it's important to recognize how there are Black Jews and also other Jews of color. The Jewish community is very diverse. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that. And I'm sure Zach will speak to that as we move forward in our conversation. Okay, so Zach, I am ready to pose my first question to you. And keep in mind, everyone, if there are questions that come to mind throughout this conversation, please, please, please write your questions in the Q&A box because I want to pose those questions to Zach at the end of our portion of the conversation. Okay, Zach, so can you tell the audience more about who you are, your background, and also what brings you to the work of social justice?
All right, start with the hard ones first. And Uncle Gary is listening, so I can't cuss anymore, but that's okay.
Okay.
I'll behave myself.
Yes.
First of all, thank you so much for having me. This is a real pleasure and joy to be here. And I enjoyed all of our conversations leading up to this. And thanks for always just trying to bring people together and educate folks. Oh man, what brings me here? So I think from a young age in the household, I was always, at the dinner table with my dad who was yelling at the TV screen because something was going on in the news. And so from a young age, I was always like politically interested. And like the elephant in the room in my family was always that there was, I didn't have a big family. I didn't know what a like cousin was growing up or like a niece or nephew and all that stuff, because there was a genocide in my family. My dad was born in a refugee camp in Germany, and his parents were in Auschwitz, and most of their families were murdered in the Holocaust.
Mm,
And so they came in the 1950s to America. And so I had one parent who was an immigrant and the other parent who was Jewish American, like second generation. And so also getting like messages from my parents from a young age. They were both educators and also in politics, that there was a close connection between different groups that experienced genocide, right? Native American genocide, the genocide that happened in Europe, not only to Jewish folks, but to Roma folks, to queer folks, to socialists and so on. And then to the Black Holocaust, which is like 500 years old, right? And so making those connections from a young age made me interested in either going into politics or going into history teaching. And I went into history teaching because I realized politics is a beautiful thing, but I didn't want to necessarily listen to folks that had a lot of money and have them tell me what to say. So I went into academia so that I could try to like learn from my students and that we could co-create some knowledge together, and then try to take that theory and knowledge from the classroom and then try to do something with it in society to create nonprofits or to push on government to do the right thing. And so I think that kind of justice lens has always pushed me to do whatever I do.
thank you so much. And thank you for sharing um, your background with us and being vulnerable in that way. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about Black and Jewish history. Can you identify instances in which Black and Jewish communities supported one another, especially in the fight against white supremacy? And can you also identify instances in which Black and Jewish communities haven't been on the same page and how that has impacted us.
Totally. So first of all, shout out to Dr. Isaac Carter, who is a dear friend of mine and a writing partner. And we wrote a chapter about this very topic that should be coming out soon. He was a professor at, Dr. Isaac Carter was a professor at Laverne, and now he's running his own diversity consulting that you also check out in Miami. The chapter was looking at the golden age between Ashkenazi Jews and Black folks. And so just terms, defining terms, Ashkenaz means East or Eastern Europe. So folks that usually are light skinned or white presenting Jewish people, most likely are Ashkenazi, meaning from Eastern Europe. And then you got Sephardic Jews. Sephard is the old name for Spain. And so that's the group that was in Spain. And then they, because the Inquisition in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, but also they kicked out other Muslims and Jews from Spain. So those folks went to North Africa and also went to the Netherlands. And then you have Mizrahi Jews, which are like Ethiopian Jews, Ugandan Jews. Mizrahi means East, Indian Jews, Kaifeng Chinese Jews. And so there's Jews of all different hues from around the world. I think just in American media, maybe we focus a lot on Ashkenormativity, which is like Ashkenazi centric. But this book chapter was looking at Ashkenazi Jews and Black folks and the golden age from 1910. So 1910 to 1967. And we were looking at the formation of the NAACP, which was partly started by several Jewish, like Ashkenazi white Jewish folks, and one of them being, along with W.B. Du Bois. And so one of them was Julius Rosenwald. And Julius Rosenwald is a very interesting, famous story. Y'all should look it up. Julius Rosenwald was the CEO of Sears. They called it Sears Roebuck glass back then. And he understood that he was from Illinois, but his parents were from Germany. And he understood that like his folks, Jewish folks, were being killed in Europe by Russians, by different forces, pogroms over the years. And he saw a connection between that destruction of a culture and a people with Black folks in America. And so he teamed up with Booker T. Washington in the early 1900s and built 5,700 schools from Texas all the way to the Carolinas and to the Virginias. And these are called the Rosenwald schools. And this is because a Black and Jewish partnership that we had all these schools, and that the government actually was not doing this type of work at the time. The government was actively anti-Black, and arguably you could say it's still anti-Black. The reason why there was an era of good feeling, or I should say shared unity, solidarity between these groups, is because they lived in the same cities, neighborhoods, and they occupied the same, maybe they were in the same socioeconomic status at the time. European immigrants, right, in tenements in New York, we often think of those images. They were poor, right? And because of historical oppression in America, Black folks were also relegated to lower paying jobs. Now, Ashkenazi Jews still had lighter skin, right? And this would come into play even more so as Jews ascended into whiteness, we could say, in America. And there's a book behind me called How Jews Became White Folks by Karen Brodkin, and check it out, it's very interesting. You start to see a cleavage or a separation between these groups, in the 60s. So right before Martin Luther King gives a speech, like literally the person that gave the speech before the I Have a Dream speech was named Rabbi Prince, not like Prince, not like the singer, but like with a Z, Prince. And he was the rabbi from Berlin, and he got chased out by the Nazis. And his speech was basically saying, silence is violence. We're getting killed in Europe by these Nazis, and Black folks are getting killed in this country by police. You know, Fred Hampton would be later killed by COINTELPRO. and all these types of things. And so that was a moment of unity. But in the late 60s, you have Jewish nationalism rising up with the 1967 war in Israel, and Israel becoming more militarized. And then you have Black nationalism also on the rise. And someone like Sammy Davis Jr., who was a Black Jew, would say he's being pulled in two directions, right? Because he's Black and Jewish. Like even Drake talks about this today, right? He's Black and Jewish. And so with the rise of like Stokely Carmichael and Black Power movement, they're like, we don't need, nor do we want white people telling us what to do or in the movement anymore. Like you could take a side seat, but you can't be in the front. And so also in 1968, you have the Fair Housing Act being lifted. And so that whole thing of no Mexicans, no Black folks, no Jews can be in this neighborhood, that is officially off the books, right? But still would be in practice in some neighborhoods, obviously still to this day. And so then you have white Jewish flight from neighborhoods. And you also have, if they could get out, right? If you Black doctors or lawyers, then you have Black flight from certain neighborhoods. And then you have like more impoverished neighborhoods that would be left behind, but then Black and Jewish folks would then not be living in the same neighborhoods as each other. And therefore we live in like a racialized capitalist system. And so then they would be competing with each other for different scraps that were left, but also again, Jews being able to ascend to whiteness, whereas Black folks could not.
Thank you so much for that very thorough response. And those are really good examples of when Black and Jewish community members came together for good. And then also kind of touching on how, I mean, at the end of the day, both communities are trying to fight white supremacy, right? And it's good to kind of keep that at the forefront of what's really going on when thinking about how to stay united or come together.
Totally.
Anything else, Zach?
Well, I just want to say that in 1972, Tom Bradley ran for mayor in Los Angeles, and it was a united, front. I guess they would call it the what did they call it? What did Jesse Jackson call it? The Rainbow Coalition, right? So Black folks and Jewish folks helped get elected Tom Bradley, the first Black mayor of Los Angeles from 1972 to 1992. And, the irony of that is that an ushering in of this like multiracial coalition brought Tom Bradley into government. And then it was the Rodney King uprisings. And the disunity that we saw of, Jewish folks being a wedge community between monolithic whiteness and then what Bonilla Silva calls like collective Blackness. You would then see, like my grandfather would be a wedge community person like that because Jews were, the new Jewish immigrants were owning liquor stores and markets in Black and brown neighborhoods. And then when those Jewish folks went up the racialized capitalist system, then you have Korean folks in Los Angeles going into that wedge role again, like not necessarily they wanted to do that, but that's what our system kind of like forces people to do. So then they were owning the liquor stores and things like that. And then you see in 1991, 92, you see Latasha Harlins get murdered by the Korean grandma who was running the liquor store because Latasha Harlins supposedly stole the 50-cent orange juice, which, I mean, obviously there was more, it was ridiculous because the person, the Korean grandma who shot her got community service, whereas Latasha Harlins lost her life. And this helped lead to, on top of the Rodney King beatings and the acquittal of those police officers, that led to the riots. So it's kind of messed up, but sometimes people say like East Asian Americans are the quote unquote new Jews. And that's just because, again, back to Bonilla Silva's hierarchy of the kind of racialized capitalist system we have, once one group ascends to whiteness or money or whatever it is, then a new immigrant group comes and takes that role. And Black folks oftentimes are, Black and brown folks and indigenous folks are stepped on and are oppressed by this system that we have in place.
And maybe you can talk a little bit more about that, right? How, like you were saying, how Black people always, for the most part, seem to have a certain social status no matter what. Although there are Black people, of course, who can ascend from that, but that takes a lot of work, and there's ways in which to do that, of course. But I guess the most basic kind of answer to what's going on as well is white supremacy, right? And we know that is at the root of it all, but I was wondering if maybe you could explore it a little bit more, right? Because you're talking about how every so often there's a new wedge community, right? But yet we still see certain communities that still have a very hard and challenging time getting ahead. So what's the responsibility perhaps of those wedge communities, and maybe helping a little bit more? I hope that was clear.
Yeah, I mean, so Bonilla Silva's racial dichotomy or trichotomy is talking about, at the top, there's whites. Okay, so initially Irish were not considered white in the United States, right? They were considered the white N-words. And they also lived in the same neighborhoods as Black folks, and were treated very poorly. Even today, a vestige of that is the Fighting Irish, right? That little, the Fighting Irish little character we used to caricaturize and Irish folks as these racialized, like whatever, little leprechauns and things like that. Okay, within that white group, you have all the different like European ethnic groups that we know of that we would, I guess, considered white in America today. French, Germans, right? Germans at first were not considered white. Like Budweiser was German and was not liked, and they called them Frankfurters, and then they became hot dogs because of like World War I. We didn't want to call them Frankfurters anymore. And then you have like honorary whites in the middle. And so honorary whites could be Jews, could be Korean folks, like Korean American, Japanese, Chinese American, and there's a bunch of other folks that I'm like maybe not thinking of, like certain Latin American groups that maybe are more light skin. And then you have in this like bottom part of Bonilla Silva's racial trichotomy is like collective Blackness. And so that also includes like Filipinx Americans, Hmong, Laotian, Cambodian folks, and it could be like, like Haitian folks, Dominican folks. There's a whole bunch of folks that fit into all these different ones. And so the notion is, because of the way white supremacy works, society gives goodies to those that are higher up on this pyramid. Now, to answer the other question, which is harder, like how can groups that find themselves in the wedge not play that role? I mean, we see some examples of it, of people that are trying to be more equitable with supporting Black and brown, like BIPOC small business owners. But again, the system's not really created to do redistributive wealth. There are some examples in American history. So for example, my family benefited from Jewish reparations, and we're talking a lot about Black reparations today, which I think needs to happen. So the way Jewish reparations happen is the like different European countries pressured Germany in 1952, West Germany, because East was still communist, and they had to pay a lot of money to the Jewish survivors. They did not pay to like the Romani, like the Gypsy folks, or the gay folks that were killed in the concentration camps. But Jewish folks, at least my grandma got like $300 per month from the German government until she died in 2010. And I think that helped my family, get on its feet in the United States, because we didn't have much. Also, Japanese American folks who were interned and killed in the camps in America, and their property was stolen and never given back. They got $20,000 in 1988 I mean, it was one time $20,000. It's not going to bring back your dead relatives. It's not going to bring back, like, you know, all those years you lost. But it is a show and a sign of healing and reparative work. In 2008, the United States government officially apologized for Black slavery, but there was no money tied to it. So there's Congressman Conyers introduced a long time ago HR 40, which is a bill just to research what Black reparations would look like. There's a good new book called From Here to Equality, which I encourage people to check out. And it's looking at what Black reparations would look like. You know, when General Sherman was going through Georgia, he did do Field Order 15, which actually started giving like almost like 40 acres and a mule to Black folks who were enslaved for the last hundreds of years. But that was quickly reversed. So they like had the land for like a couple years. And then when Reconstruction ended in 1877, like all that was wiped away. And we actually gave reparations to white slave owners who got $300 for every Black person that they owned. Whereas if you were a Black person who had lived and survived through the horrors of slavery, you were given a one-time $99 to either go to Costa Rica or to go to Liberia, which was like a colony that the United States owned in West Africa, named after James Monrovia. So as you can see, the history is quite unbalanced. So when we talk now about honest history, it's just frustrating to see that people are saying that that's critical race theory, or that's evil, or you're making my like white child feel bad. But in fact, the whole last 500 years of history in this country should make everybody feel bad. And there's still time to do reparative work and reparative justice here. It's never too late.
Thank you so much for that explanation. All these new questions have popped into my mind, but I'm also trying to be cognizant of time as well. We're going to have some good conversations a little bit later, Zach, too, between the two of us. But yes, I think you touched on a lot of really interesting points, right, in terms of our history. And what's interesting is last spring, I actually invited another speaker, another colleague of mine, to talk about critical race theory. And he did a really good job talking about it because, as you know, in our graduate school of education at UCLA, it was discussed, you know, and so the way that I have always understood it is just very different from what I see, like how I see it being discussed in the media. So I was like, oh, we need to talk about this because there's a lot of false information being pushed forward. So I'm glad you brought that up because it still seems really controversial. But like you said, if we really take a real look at history and we're realistic about how we teach it to young people, then yeah, you know, people or students might feel bad, but we're there as educators, right, to help them work through that and to understand what's going on. And like you said, there's still time to engage in restorative work. We can still do better as a nation. We need to do better.
We didn't create this world, right? We
Right.
were given it, right? To quote Tupac. And so what are we going to do now that we have inherited a very, very broken world? I have a dear friend and colleague who is a former student of mine named Ian, and he is working. He's a Jewish guy, Ashkenazi Jewish, working with the Tongva Native American nation, and he has started working with. He helped transfer 1 acre back to Tongva folks, and this is a Jewish and Native kind of solidarity coalition, but you know, everybody's invited to partake in this. And he is now trying to raise $1.55 million for the 1.55 million acres that were promised to Tongva Native Americans in Los Angeles, which used to be called Tovangar. And people are starting to realize that in this kind of, again, what Tupac would say, like push, 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 gimme, 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 if America doesn't watch out, it's going to end up like what Donald Trump is. And he was saying this in 1994, right? In one of his first interviews, I think it was 92, first interviews on MTV, he quoted that Donald Trump and Michael Jackson has too many houses, and we're on this path to kind of mutual destruction. But if we can share our wealth and our riches with others, what would it mean to have a thriving, Black community again in Bruce's Beach, right? Who 10 years ago, you would have said that is crazy. Like, the government's not going to give back some of that land to Bruce's Beach, right? To Black folks who got pushed out back in the day. And the same could be true of the Tongva Nation. We can restore land to them. And what would that mean for white folks in LA? It doesn't have to be that just because you're giving something up or that you're sharing some resources, that you are going to lose or die with less toys.
I like that. I'm gonna have to quote you on that. I really like that. But, in all seriousness, of course, I appreciate what you said, because we do need to share resources. And you're right. You're not really going to lose any toys in doing that. Okay, so I have another question for you. I'd like to turn your attention to discussing the trauma that both Black and Jewish communities have experienced, and how that trauma, that pain, still impacts us today, and in how we relate to one another. What's your perspective on how this pain, this lingering pain, impacts our communities?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. I know we're going to get into some of the controversy in the news, so I won't jump right into that. But
I know you and I have had some conversations regarding this.
yeah, I hope I'm not forgetting her name. There's a Dr. DeJoy, and she has a book about post-traumatic slave syndrome. And she's talking about how in a lot of people, like in a lot of Black people's bodies, lives a lot of trauma and a lot of pain, not only from slavery, if their family went through slavery, because it really does change your genetic makeup. There's studies that show, not only for Black folks, but for Native American folks, Latinx folks, Asian American folks, whatever, white folks that went through stuff, it will change your genetics, and then your kids will be a bit more anxious or a bit more wary of the world, and it may cause depression and things like that. It's called, intergenerational trauma, and it changes the alleles on your DNA. So they've done studies about, there's an equal book to this called by Dr. Firestone about Jewish folks, that about this intergenerational trauma that lives in many Jewish folks' bodies. From the Holocaust, from the pogroms, from other stuff in different nations where Jewish folks were chased out, killed, etc. And Dr. Cornel West has a great chapter in Race Matters, where he's talking about Black and Ashkenazi Jewish trauma, a shared fear of cultural death. So whenever there's something in the news that is attacking a group, one of these groups, there is a trigger response that, they want to kill us all. Here it goes again. This is the Black Holocaust again. It's the Jewish Holocaust. Here we go. And there is a rightfully found fear of this trauma that lives in our body, that we need to throw some dollars at this, throw some, big programs, throw some, sometimes, unfortunately, it's throw the law at people who sometimes, are popping off and maybe need to have some restorative justice on them. But other times people get caught up in things that maybe they didn't mean to, or whatever. But there's a shared fear that the world is out to get us and they want to kill us, and we can't give an inch, or we can't have a dialogue, because if you critique something in my community, right? A big thing in my community is Israel, right? When we talk about Israel, Palestine, I just went to Ramallah and Palestine, the West Bank, and took some students, went to Bethlehem and saw the situation over there. What I came out thinking is there needs to be, justice for everybody in that region. And it doesn't have to be an either or thinking, which we learned from, right, Jones and Okun, the white supremacy thought, the either or thinking that we experience at the workplace. It's a good article if y'all haven't checked it out. White Supremacy Culture is what it's called, by Jones. But if someone critiques Israel, let's say Israel's government, then there's an initial response of this trauma that, uh-oh, now you want all my people dead, and now I have to say something about it, shut you down, and things like that. But in some cases, as we'll get into, some of the speech goes too far, and then it's actually very, very dangerous for a lot of different groups, not only Jewish folks.
Thank you so much, Zach. I was taking notes on some of what you were saying, especially about shared fear, right? And how that fear can be triggered pretty easily. And who knows what the behavior is going to look like, depending on the situation, who the person is, and how deep that pain really runs. So this actually takes us into talking about Kanye West and Kyrie Irving. And I know you and I have touched base on this, and we've shared our own thoughts regarding it, but I know there's so much to unpack with both of these men and the controversies surrounding them both. And so let me know how you want to approach talking about both of them. Because like I said, I know we've had our own discussions, but I want to know what are some of your initial thoughts? However you want to,
Yeah.
totally fine.
No, it's just, look, I love and care deeply about all these communities. And so it just breaks my heart.
Yeah.
I was just sad. I just feel sad about it, because I feel like the point from all this is not to like hate on this group and then love on this group. That's not, like, if we all want to be like, if we all want to get free, we got to get free together. And it makes me sad that it takes two prominent celebrities to say some foolish stuff, and then that's what brings us together, and that's what gets us to start having this conversation about a beautiful shared history that has a lot of problematic times in its history, and that should be renewed. All right, we need to be in community with each other. But okay, let's take it one at a time.
Yeah.
I mean, Kanye, I think he's just doing a publicity stunt. And like today, he went on Alex Jones with Nick Fuentes, the neo-Nazi guy. And he was saying he likes Hitler and that the Nazis aren't so bad and we shouldn't hate on Nazis because even Hitler brought good things to the world. Like, at this point, I feel like he's trolling people, or maybe he's just a super white supremacist. And I don't know. I don't look to Kanye as like the moral authority on much. I think in the old days when he was like, George Bush doesn't care about Black people, I think that was accurate. I think one of my friends joked and he said, yeah, but now it's the reverse. Like, Kanye West doesn't care about Black people, which I thought was sad to hear, that he's like fallen so far. But even reading the text messages between him and Diddy, like, he was saying, I know you're a federal agent, Diddy. Like, I know the Jews have sent you to come get me. Even in the interview with Alex Jones, he said that the Israeli Prime Minister, Bibi Netanyahu, is trying to take away custody of his kids. Like, it's like very outlandish things that don't make sense. But like, yeah, so I don't know. Kanye, I think he's trying to run for president and he's passing out White Lives Matter t-shirts with the Pope on the back. Like, I'm not sure I guess he's just trying to do the Trump thing of like stir up a lot of controversy, all eyes on me, all money in my pocket, and now I'm gonna run for president. So I'm not taking Kanye too seriously right now. He's also calling out Rihanna and saying like she slept with this person. I'm like, what are you doing, man? Anyway, so Kyrie,
There's a lot.
okay,
There's a
and I
lot
should say,
going on. Yeah.
there's a lot. And I should also say, it's easy to just be like, Kanye, yeah, okay, yeah, the person, what they said in the chat right there, yeah, there are some mental health issues for sure. Yeah, like I think when his mother died, I think he felt very guilty because he helped pay for that surgery and then she died. And so I think she probably was his rock. And so when she died, like, I don't know, and then he married the Kardashians and it got weird. Anyway,
Well,
his action, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I was searching online to look more into, the mental health challenges that he has. And I saw an interview where he was being asked about his mental health challenges. And the way he was trying to describe it was even really interesting, and I talked to one of my colleagues who is a clinical psychologist, and she has worked with a variety of patients. And actually, I talked about this yesterday on the during the other conversation, but she was saying that it is important for us to take mental illness into account
Oh,
and
yeah.
to also have compassion, but at the same time, right, there has to there's great responsibility with what you say at the end of the day, right? And there still needs to be accountability there as well. So when you say you feel sad, I'm sorry, I was just going to say I actually do too, because it does just feel sad, like what we're seeing happening. I agree. That's just kind of how it's like, wow, this is just really sad to see all of this unfolding in the media.
Yeah, because I work with a lot of Jewish communities and people were super freaked out, as actually I was when I saw I wasn't freaked out by Kanye because I know he said slavery is a choice, right? He's always saying some very, very strange off the wall things. And that was like super offensive. Slavery was not a choice. That not neo-Nazi group that flew the flag of saying Kanye was right and going TV and all this stuff, and they were doing the Nazi salute. That's when I was like, uh-oh, like this is in LA, this is on the 405 going to the LAX, like that's not good. Like uh-oh, some of that like intergenerational trauma was like, uh-oh, now I feel triggered. Am I safe? Am I uh-oh? Because like, yes, I could pass as a white person. But if you really hate on Jews, like you could be like, that guy looks Jewish. I know he's got the features, da 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 da. Like some places you can pass as just white, but other places people know that you're visibly Jewish. Like there's a look that like for whatever Ashkenazi Jews, like you look like an Ashkenazi Jews. I'm not going to say that for like Mizrahi and Sephardic Jews. That's a different look, right? So that was scary. That was definitely scary for me. But the thing with Kyrie, I mean, I guess my personal opinion, again, like these are my opinions. I'm not trying to like represent all Jews in the world or whatever. And like, I'm not trying to represent the places I work at, but I'm assuming he like thought the documentary was interesting and cool and interpreted it as kind of like Black liberation because like the Egyptians are Black and like Black people got their like shine stolen from them and like, Black folks did get their shine stolen from them in different ways. But I always get critical when one group's success has to come at another group's failure, because there are Black Jews, no doubt. That's undisputed. And I don't know if like every single Black person in the world was originally Jewish. I mean, okay, I don't know. But that doesn't necessarily mean that white Jews are fake. Like it doesn't have to be an either or thinking. Again, in that Jones and Okun white supremacy culture, that's falling into the white supremacy culture, the either or thinking. It can't be yes and. Like there's Jews of all hues. They come in all different shapes and sizes and whatever. So I watched some of the Hebrews to Negroes documentary and I was like not impressed. Like some of it was interesting because that's like Semite comes from Shem, and Shem is the son of Noah, if you believe all the biblical stuff. And like Shem was born without foreskin, and maybe that's where they get like cutting off the foreskin of the penis. And like, yes, but you know, you and I were talking about it yesterday. Like, to quote Hitler at the end of the documentary, like, I feel like maybe there was different motivations for making the documentary, not just empowering Black folks to know that they came from kings and queens. But I think, look, again, I'm not looking to Kyrie as the moral arbiter of the universe. I mean, this is the brother who said that the earth is flat. This is the dude that said that the vaccines are crappy. So is it fair? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but is it fair that he, you know, gets super, super punished because he's wouldn't take the thing down? Was he just being ignorant? I don't know. That's maybe beyond my pay grade, but I wouldn't put Kanye on the same level as Kyrie. And then, you know, even with the Dave Chappelle stuff, like, I think Chappelle was trying to make light of a situation, and maybe people got upset about that as well. But you know, I think sometimes we have to laugh at some of this stuff, or else we're just gonna implode inside. You have to have some levity in this world.
Thank you so much for giving your opinion on Kanye and Kyrie. With Kanye, there's a lot of layers there, right, to unpack. And I'm not around Kanye. I know you're not either. We're not in his circle. We don't really know what's going on at the end of the day. And so I think, you know, I think anyone who's really upset with him, or I'm thinking of like Jewish community members who are organizations, it would be so great if they like sat down and talked with him, you know, just to maybe see like, where's the frustration coming from? Like, where is this behavior coming from? Like, what is really going on? Because I'm always at the school where I think we can talk things out. We can talk about things. I don't know if I'm just being naive in that sense, but I really feel that conversations can help bring about more understanding, and it can kind of help people to become less defensive and break down walls. And I would love to see that happen, you know, because I'm not sure if, I mean, it just seems like there's a lot of back and forth and back and forth action going on right now. And that's why I agree with what you said initially, how this is just really sad to see playing out on this really large stage. And then with Kyrie, I also see his situation slightly differently. I listened to his two press conferences, his two initial press conferences that he had. And if you haven't listened to his press conferences, anyone in the audience, I'll send links. I think you should listen to what he has to say, and he is explaining where he was coming from. This was prior to him issuing an apology, but he was trying to explain where he was coming from, and he also kept saying that he didn't create the film. You know, he was
Right.
he was doing a search. You know, he was searching. He's all about enlightenment, wanting to learn more about his name, just learn about his history, and came across the movie. And I do understand the argument of, well, at the end of the day, you know, he's an NBA player. He has this huge platform. So anything he tweets, right, people are going to pay attention to. So I totally understand that argument. At the same time, like when you listen to what he says, it's hard not to say, okay, I see where he was coming from and all of this. And he since has, you know, come forward and apologized and done all the things, you know, he's been asked to do. And I know a lot of people have been critiquing everything he's been asked to do as well, but it seems like he did everything. He's back playing basketball again. So it'd be interesting to see how things continue to play out with Kyrie. Well, I know we're both looking at the message that just came up. And let me see. So thank you so much for what you're saying here. So is it okay? I want to read it if that's okay. So there's a message here in the chat and I want to read it. Okay, great. It says Kyrie is getting a lot of pressure from ownership and NBA to say a certain thing and backpedal on his actions, which he does not want to do. I don't believe he comes from a place of hate. Yeah, and he's talked about, like, since he started playing basketball again, he did put out a video. I saw it on YouTube where he was being interviewed, and he said that he's a really peaceful person. He just seemed a bit in shock about everything that has gone down, but he said he basically just wants peace. He doesn't, he didn't want all the attention that it seemed he didn't want all the attention that came with this. And so, yeah. Any thoughts, any response? Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. You know me, I have a lot of thoughts, but okay. The thing we forget is Hitler wanted to kill Black people, and he did kill Black people. And his whole ideology was based off of the Ubermensch, which are the Supermen. That's where you get, so Superman, the comic book, came from Jewish high schoolers that made it in the 1940s, 1940s, 1930s. Because in German, Ubermensch is what they called the superior race, like Uber, the driving thing. Uber means upper. So Ubermensch is the supermen. And then there's the Untermensch, which are the lower people. And the lower people are Black folks, Jewish folks, Russian folks, Polish folks that are like gay, like queer folks. And they are bad and lower than us. Therefore, they should be our slaves. And then we're going to kill them. And we're going to take out their gold teeth, and we're going to take their bones and make soap. And we're going to take their skin and make lampshades. And this is what they did with people that were in the concentration camps. And they took their hair and made clothes. I mean, it was pretty sick, very barbarian stuff. But Black people that were killed in the concentration camps and in POW camps, because there were British and French Black folks and American Black folks that were captured by the Germans, and they were treated like even worse than the white folks in the POW camps. And Hitler said that the United States was like a, what do you say, a quote, Judaized Negroid country. So he saw the Black and Jewish folks teaming up and getting together and having babies and stuff in the United States. And he said, that's why we have to take them over and kill them. And, they're not a pure race and all that crap. And he even said that Black and Jewish folks are connected because they came from Ham in the Bible. I don't know if I believe all that stuff, but this is what he created as a pseudoscience. So I don't think people know this type of history even from Hitler. But I think another unspoken thing, and thank you for this person who brought this up in the chat here, that history I gave you from the 1910s to 1967 and Jewish folks ascending to whiteness. Are there certain Jewish folks historically that are Ashkenazi Jewish folks in the music industry that again were the wedge community and the upper management between the Anglo-Saxon Christian folks and Black entertainers? Yes. Did some of them screw over the Black entertainers? Probably. In this situation, the NBA, the last two owners were Ashkenazi Jewish guys. Do I see that as a direct evidence that there's a Jewish conspiracy to take over the world? No. Do I see that there are white Jewish folks that are in positions of power that are making decisions for Black bodies that could be problematic? Yes, of course. And I think that's where the tension comes in. And then I guess it's easy to just say this whole group wants to take over the world. But again, check out Exterminate All the Brutes on HBO, right? This is, forgetting his name. He's a famous Haitian director, Exterminate All the Brutes. And he's showing how the problematic interconnected nature of anti-Semitism and anti-Blackness, and that these are like connected. And this is what my book chapter is about. I think we call it Kissing Cousins or something like that, anti-Blackness and anti-Semitism. And in the Exterminate All the Brutes, this person, this director, is talking about how Henry Ford was an anti-Semite and an anti-Black hater, and he created obviously the first cars in the United States. He gave almost $300,000 to Hitler every year for his birthday. He would put a book called the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which is a fictitious book created by the Soviets to do propaganda, like I guess you could argue some Russia does still today. This Protocols of the Elders of Zion that was made in the early 1900s was created to demonize Jewish people so it would be easier to kill them and take their land. I mean, this is not rocket science, and that's what they did to my family in Eastern Europe. And Henry Ford would put a copy of this terrible book into each one of his Model T cars for the new owner to read and to enjoy. So this stuff has been around for a long time. And again, in the United States, they demonize Black folks, they demonize Mexican-American folks. I have a book behind me called Bad Mexicans. Donald Trump, bad hombres, all that stuff. This is a continual playbook that fear mongers and dictators use. They did it to Japanese American folks and put them in the camps. Demonize this group. They're bad. Take them away, put them into a camp, take their money, take their property, take their teeth, take their hair, take their skin until they're all dead. And then we don't have to think about them. And then we, whatever other group becomes the big dog at the end of the day. And so it's disgusting.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being very open with how you feel. I know, like I was saying, when you and I have our own discussions, we always kind of just talk about, what we're feeling and what we're seeing. And so I appreciate how candid you have been here. And I think when it comes to, and I've been listening to everything that you're saying, I think when it comes to Kanye and Kyrie and just other controversies, I'm hoping that, if well, I don't know how things are going to play out with Kanye. I guess we just have to stay tuned, but when it comes to Kyrie, hopefully there's some healing that's being done between him and the people who he's been in contact, who wanted to have conversations with him surrounding all this. And I do see another message here, and I'm going to read it. It's in the chat. And the message says, these public figures may not have a full understanding of the terms and meanings of things, and just like the ideas that the documentary, for example, brings and the narrative it has, they say things without full awareness of the damage it may do. Yeah, just really quickly, I know I know there's people who have to go, and I want to say thank you so much for staying on and listening to us. And if you can stay for a little bit longer, there are a couple of questions in the chat that I want to get to. I want to read what I'm seeing here. I know Dr. Ritter, Zack, he's reading the messages as well. But there will be a recording, and I will send the recording for all of these different videos to you all so you can finish watching them. But thank you to the people who have to go. But I guess the last thing I wanted to say, I just wanted to say something else. I want to say I watched the documentary too, because I wanted to see what was going on for myself. I'm a scholar. when I'm hearing about a film, for me, it's important, at least, for me to sit down and watch it as well and see what's going on, and kind of draw my own conclusions. And, I can understand where there are definitely places in the film that can be seen as offensive. Absolutely. And then on the other hand, I can see how maybe the man who created the film, how he was trying to do, he's on the search, right? He's trying to explore identity, really, his identity and that of other Blacks. So I like the way you summarized how you saw the film, Zach. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and I just want to say I was hanging out with amazing, internationally known Black Jewish educator and activist Yavila McCoy with a Y. I'll put it in the chat, Yavila McCoy, and she's doing work trying to educate folks about Black Jewish unity, about anti-racist work. And so again, I think there are a lot of them. I wish the amazing people doing the liberatory work were being elevated, and we were talking about, man, did you hear what Alana Kaufman said about this like Black Jewish liberation stuff? Or Yavila McCoy was talking about X, Y, and Z. I wish that was promulgated through the news, but unfortunately we live in like a kind of a clickbait, outrage, shock value, gets money type thing, where our eyeballs go to the most egregious or violent thing happening, rather than talking about the amazing liberatory work that actually is happening every day. We just don't hear about it.
Absolutely. And I guess this brings me to my last point, just hearing what you just said. Um, in thinking about our collective liberation, right? What is your advice, if you have any, in helping to bridge any, let's say, dissatisfaction felt among Black and Jewish community members, especially right now with what we see happening in the media? How can those of us within these communities continue to work together, or maybe come back together, right, in peace and in support of one another?
I've been part of some Jewish temples who do Easter or do, services with Black church called the Faith Tabernacle in Inglewood. I think we need to have our faith communities come together and talk about these issues and create policy that changes these issues. I'm part of a temple called IKAR, IKAR, and they're doing a Yes in God's Backyard bill, where they've torn down their parking lot and they're building affordable housing, 55 units of affordable housing on their property. I think we got to start thinking in new ways beyond institutions, where we could do mutual aid of Black communities and Ashkenazi Jewish communities. There's Generation, what is it? Reparation Generation is one organization I've heard of. There's another organization that it's like kind of like a wealth redistribution organization, where they're taking young folks that have means, and they are redistributing that money to folks that really need it. I think there are interesting political policies that are being put forward of reparations as a check, reparations as baby bonds for college. In Evanston, outside of Chicago, there's an interesting thing where they're doing reparative work, where Black folks who can prove that they lived in Chicago in the 60s and got discriminated against can get up to $25,000 for housing vouchers. In Asheville, North Carolina, they're doing some kind of reparative work towards Black communities. We need to be talking to each other. We need to be, whoever has more privilege, power, and status should be sharing that wealth with others. And there's something amazing that Rabbi Aryeh Cohen is doing in Los Angeles. He's started the Black Jewish Justice Alliance. There's a Black Jewish Entertainment Alliance. And so when we stand together as communities to fight white supremacy, we all win. And we all live a better, happier life. And we build that beloved community that Dr. King was talking about before he was gunned down in 1968. And there's a lot of work to be done. I mean, I think that's what gets me up every day, that I have the privilege and honor to be in front of audiences like these, that I may never know you all, and I may never get to talk to you all again, but maybe, again, to quote Tupac, who was one of my heroes growing up, I didn't make the world that we have, but if I keep talking about how messed up it is, maybe someone will come up and help fix it. And that I may not be the person that will change the world, but I may be the person that will spark the brain that will change the world. And so that's what gets me up every day. We got to keep doing, talking, thinking, and dreaming together.
Thank you so much, Zach. I can totally resonate with what you were saying. This this work that we do, the social justice work. It's challenging, but it's so needed. And I think you and I both come from a place of wanting to build bridges and build community, because I think that's the only way we can truly all fight white supremacy and really make our society a better place for people to live in and to thrive. So I appreciate what you said, and I'm so glad you're on today. And we have run out of time, but
Yeah.
I'm going to capture all of these questions. I would love for you, I'd like to kind of put them in a Word document. I'd love for you to kind of address these questions, but some of them are statements, and people have a lot to say. The audience is great here, and this is wonderful. I don't know if there is anything you want to address before we head out.
Yeah, I mean, there's some interesting
I have great
questions that once we're done, I'd be down to talk to those folks if they want to stay after. This work is hard, and we are bridges, and bridges get walked on every day, and it doesn't feel good sometimes, and it can be very painful. And I've had some very, very painful experiences in my life trying to approach situations as a good faith person, and there's some person above me with more power, and it really hurt. And but I think the lesson from those things are folks with power are gonna want to keep it and do what they want to do with it. But I think you and I know that if we get into coalition with people that have as big of hearts as we do and have as big of a vision of what could be, big dreamers of what could be, like Adrienne Marie Brown, like Audre Lorde, like Bell Hooks, like there's folks that like, Hudson Weems, Africana womanism, like there's folks that have paved the way for Angela Davis. Someone mentioned Angela Davis. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to keep walking down the same path, knowing that we are going to be planting the seeds of trees that we will never get to experience the shade from, but to know that someone else will benefit from the beautiful energy and work that we are putting out into the world. And that's what keeps me going every day.
I agree. That's what keeps me going too. I love that. Thank you so much, Zach. I really appreciate you being here today. I
Love
always,
you. Appreciate you.
yeah, I know. I always like talking to you. It's always wonderful. Thank you. And thank you to all the audience members for being on today. Like I said, I'm going to go ahead and post this recording, and I'll send you the link, and also a lot of the resources that were listed. I will provide those to you as well. And yeah, I think it's going to be really great. So thank you so much. All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I see all the hearts. People are clapping. There's hearts. Oh, sweet. What a sweet audience. Thank you. So
Love
cute.
y'all. Love y'all.